Welcome back to What's Next Longevity Deal Talk. In this edition, robots, healthcare, and senior living. A big announcement from Labrador Systems, maker of personal assistive robots. I'm Fred Fishkin, along with Mary Furlong. Hi, Mary.
Hi, Fred. We have another important and exciting podcast today.
We sure do. Our guests are looking to improve care with personal assistive robots. From Labrador Systems, we want to welcome CEO Mike Dooley. Hi, Mike.
Hi, Fred. Hi, Mary. Great to be on the program.
From Nationwide, Innovation Director Micah Fenning. Hi, Micah.
Hi, thanks for having me.
And from the Perfect Companion, a Phoenix-based company that provides caregiving in homes and senior living facilities, John Siegel. Hi, John.
Hello, Fred. Hello, Mary. Great to be with you.
And next to John is Cassandra McCormick. Hi, Cassandra.
Hi, good morning. Thank you for having us.
Terrific. Well, it is wonderful to have all of you with us. Mike, you have a startup that is making robots that are focused on helping people remain independent for longer. Let's do a little show and tell here.
Thanks, Fred. Yeah, we're developing pretty much an entirely new type of robot to help people live independently. This is just showing a quick 1-minute interview view of it. These are pilot users, people that had the robot up for up to 8 weeks in their homes, using it for different purposes, everyone from recovering from stroke to dealing with multiple sclerosis or arthritis. And it really meant to be an extra pair of hands, first to let people be more active, where, lifting a full laundry bag or carrying all the plates back and forth or dishes or bringing things in for, from the groceries. It's really meant to be that extra pair of hands for heavy lifting, as well as it has the ability to bring you things. So in one of those shots, we were showing like bringing somebody a health kit as a reminder of, when to take your blood pressure medication or things like that. So we're really excited about the product. Again, we've had it in pilots for over 1.5 years now through some of the partners we're talking with today, as well as some of the other people we recently announced in the program.
Oh, that's so exciting. I can think of so many applications for people aging in place at home. And so many people have arthritis, over 40 million, I think.
Right.
And now you've announced your first reservation for these robots. So Micah, what's the involvement of Nationwide here?
We have a long relationship with Labrador. Always been fascinated by this product. Mike, you'll have to correct me, but it feels like it's been a couple of years that we've been talking.
It is. It has been
learning.
Yeah, and it also started with Nationwide funding the pilot research you see now. We announced that at the beginning of the year. So, now Micah can talk about the next step that we're going on to.
Yeah, and so when we announced that first pilot study sponsorship, our Chief Innovation and Digital Officer spoke about we're a technology-focused mutual. We have a mission of protection, and we have 40 to 50-year relationships with our customers. And so we know that their needs change over time, and we know that aging in place is their desired goal. I think we're very aligned with a lot of the insights that Mike has on the care crisis and the caregiving gaps. We see a lot of the same thing. And so I think that whether it's an annuity product, a life product, a retirement product, it's still people dealing with challenges in day-to-day lives. And because we have a relationship with them, how can we help? And so we're really exploring a lot of different ways that we might do that. It might be the robot, it might be the data, it might be a lot of things that we could help with. And it just very much fits our mission of protection. And I think it's just a great solve for a big need.
And it puts that Nationwide name behind a product like this, which of course to you, Mike, has got to be really, really important.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about deployment. How many, where, when, Mike?
So it's going to be rolling out. So we've been doing these pilot studies so far, going back to February of 2021. Because of COVID, we were doing those with private individuals to start, the people you see in the videos. And then we moved on to working with partner organizations and with the support of Nationwide. So we've had it in 2022, had it mainly with the senior living operators testing either on-site visits or leave behinds, as well as with a large, which we announced Unlock actually was testing the robot. They're a PACE provider and testing it at homes in San Francisco. So from here, we move on to production. So actually, The first couple production robots, the test builds happen in 2 weeks, and from there we'll be rolling into test releases and eventually into full production. And so the deployment we're talking about here, we aren't giving all the numbers on it, but I give you a sense of the scope. Just in one city, for the reservations we have signed up, we're talking about hundreds of robots in just one metropolitan area. And that's through a mix of partners. And then we'll be scaling that through different regions. Like Phoenix is obviously a very hot spot with where John and Cassandra are their first base of operation. And then we'll keep rolling out from there.
Well, let's bring them in. The folks at The Perfect Companion are among those on board. John and Cassandra, tell us about the decision to go with this kind of technology and what went into it.
We have a highly discretionary income clientele here, and our whole goal is to enhance the personal engagement with our clients on a day-to-day type of a basis. So for us, this was a natural enhancement of personalization of services for us. We are a clinically based concierge hospitality home care company. So in order for us to differentiate us out from all the franchises out there, we had to find a niche. And our niche is really focusing on the psychosocial determinants and to try to match up the individual skill sets and personality of our caregivers with the individual needs and personality of our clients. So for us, we spend a lot of time building relationships with our clients and their families. As most of you know, the caretakers for a lot of the clients are the adult females, particularly one, and we tend to bond with that person. And so we're able to establish very strong professional relationships, which leads us to really be excited about the possibility of having assisted devices to try to help our clients with such things as fall risk, for any kind of mundane, say, everyday ADLs in the home, food preparation, laundry, medication reminders, all of those things that allow us to spend more time developing the purposeful engagement with our clients. And the clientele, I think Mary would appreciate that. We hire a lot of seniors to come work for us. As companions and caregivers, we hire retired nurses, retired school teachers, an older clientele that really can relate to the clientele that we have from a personality standpoint. So with our companions and our caregivers in hospice care, the robots can really make a difference in the quality of life for all of us.
Cassandra, do you want to add to that?
Yes, in the assisted living communities, this also provides an opportunity for us to share the technology and show them another level of care. And we have staffing issues in those communities, and it really gives us an opportunity to show them they can do med reminders, send out meal. The importance during COVID, I think, really showed us that using the Labrador systems to do those delivery systems is a very safe mechanism to reduce exposure. And they have the ability to get to multiple floors and multiple rooms in a very efficient way to deliver those needs.
So that is the number one problem in assisted living. That's probably the number one problem. One of the number one problems in America is labor shortages. Of course, you're absolutely right. I love the concept of older caregivers because they're committed. They know what they're getting into and they actually like the work. So if the technology can help make it easier for them to stay as a caregiver, that's just wonderful. And I threw out my back a couple of months ago, and I'll tell you, I really appreciate what that lifting can do if you have rheumatoid arthritis. But tell us, are there some disease states that you see more clients in than others?
I mean, we see that in the recruiting. There's a whole chart we have, and you sort of take anything that impacts mobility. And there's a couple stages. Like someone could have Parkinson's, but they have early onset, and the symptoms are fairly minimal. But then there's a progression. The point at which it restricts you from carrying items, or either because of stability, neuromuscular control, or fatigue. ALS applies, but also multiple sclerosis. You see, there's folks that are walking around and you really don't realize the pain or the difficulty they're in, because they put on a very brave face. But we talked to someone like Janet, was the woman setting the table in the video. She was using it for house cleaning because she said, now it takes me twice or three times as long because I have to carry everything carefully, move it from place just to like carry a cleaner and wipe a table or do things like that. So I think I would describe it as gravity gets heavier for folks, then this is meant to be that extra pair of hands to lighten the load. We then go on to a higher degree of progression, and that's like someone that's Parkinson's progresses, and now they're in a wheelchair part of the time, where they're more heavily dependent upon caregivers for certain ADLs, as John was describing. Then the robot takes a more active role of being sort of a support agent for them and the caregiver to do this idea of asynchronous care. So my mom could wake up in the morning and she can't get out of her hospital bed without somebody helping her. And say it's 7 a.m. and the caregiver's not due to come in until 9. Well, what if she wants a blanket or she wants something to settle her stomach or a drink? Those are all things that could be staged so that she could just ask Alexa or hit a button on a cell phone, and the robot brings that item and then puts it back when she's done. And that's important because it's closing that gap because of the caregiver shortage, but also giving that person a stronger sense of control over their environment. And that's something we hear from, whether it's a 45-year-old who's recovering from a stroke or someone in their 80s, dealing with just a range of complications. Just even when there's care around, not always having to ask somebody else for help becomes really important to their just sense of their sense of self-worth and control over their life.
I want to do one shout out to Nationwide, because Nationwide has been a sponsor of our Longevity Venture Summit, and I've seen their work in innovation. And I just think it's so important to have that brand and that trust that Nationwide has for an emerging entrepreneur. It's a perfect blend, I think. And so congratulations on that deal. That's why we created Deal Talk, to cover things like this.
Well, I think that what I want to emphasize there is when Micah and we started talking, they do deep research. I think I really value the discussions with Nationwide because they do take this sort of that customer relationship really to heart. And when we started talking about our research, what we have been learning from the pre-studies and the placements, they were going through their focus groups and their discussions with their members and caregivers, and we had the same insights. And so it was a much more fast-forwarded discussion than I would say other organizations. Even healthcare organizations tend to, I don't want to generalize, but some tend to silo this about, hey, my mom is, she got through a blood clot, she's been through the rehab hospital, she's home, and she's not our problem anymore. And I think Nationwide, both with their long-term care insurance program, as well as just their general offerings, I think takes a much different look when you start engaging with them.
Yeah, and I could talk about caregiving and aging Americans for hours, but I would say, yes, I agree with everything Mike said about our alignment on insights. One of the big takeaways we found in a lot of caregiver research has been, and I completely agree with you, John, about the oldest female seems to be the one that bears all the burden. That's not fair to my oldest daughter. I've already told her I'm sorry. But what I also hear a lot about this is we had hypotheses going into this. Does the caregiver want to remove this responsibility, outsource this work? And the answer was generally no. There's a responsibility, whether it's a loved one, it's a responsibility for a variety of reasons, and they still want to have control, but they don't want it to be such a burden in a lot of ways. And so I think the Labrador fits really well at that intersection of keeping the caregiver involved. But Mike, you've said before, this empowers the caregiver, it allows them to do more. It allows them to kind of keep doing the work while they might not even be there. And so I think that's one of the big things we see is We know people want to age in their home. We know caregivers are going to be more and more unpaid and loved ones. There's always going to be a place for all of these slices of the pie, but it's how do we help middle America and a lot of Americans who might not be ready for retirement, let alone the aging in place crisis that they might face.
So many older adults are pretty advanced when it comes to learning technology, no matter what the stereotype is. What are your thoughts about acceptance of robots in the home? Maybe each of you could chime in here.
I'll talk first because we've been placing them there. Is that I think part of it is understanding how technology should work, and that my parents are from the generation of the 40s and 50s where you hit a button and the button does the machine does what the button said it was going to do. And we live in a world where we hold up our devices and we spend half the time changing the settings. So one of our missions is to have this very, very straightforward, I wouldn't call it simple, but just very clear metaphor of how the robot works, how you can command it. And that's been a hit. So we get instant adoption. We just, with a PACE user, we had a woman in her 70s drop the robot off. We give her like 5 minutes of training on like, here's how you send it around. She uses it and she's using it over 10 times a day once we leave. And part of that is these very straightforward metaphors of like bus stops that I want to send it to my armchair. I want to send it to the kitchen. The robot knows where those are. It goes to that place and it repeatedly does that. So, and we're also working with like, whether that's using with voice, like with Alexa, or eventually like someone that may just want a button. They just have a button, I click that, and the robot shows up to the place where we programmed it to be. So I really don't see the technology as a barrier. I think it's our implementation that we have to make sure doesn't get in between the robot and the user. But I'll let Cassandra and John and Michael talk to that too.
So I agree with Mike, with what Mike just said. In terms of purposeful engagement, a lot of our clients, from a companion standpoint, I'm a highly skilled psychotherapist, and everybody focuses obviously on dementia, and I do too, and all these other things from COPD and cardiac heart failure, all these other things, medication contraindicators for sure. But somehow we're missing the boat about just people having their families away from them, especially living here in Scottsdale, the loneliness factor, just simple loneliness. And I think we're missing the boat on that, because if we can teach people cognitively, a lot of people from a companion standpoint can learn new skills. And if they can use the technology as an adjunct to them being able to have purposeful engagement and have purpose, we find that once people learn how to do things, they develop that self-worth. They develop the pride that they're learning a new skill. And if we're going to age successfully in place, we have to be able to give people the purpose. I'm all about that. So I think the technology, Cassandra actually has a technology background, and she can go in there and she can educate the families, our clients. We spend a lot of time with that. We're just not there. We're talking to our families and our clients. And as Micah just said, we're trying to get as much data as we can so we can determine how we can further that purposeful engagement from that standpoint. So,
And being able to have that conversation, that I love the telemed. They can have things in their home without having to go out, because that is something that's very difficult for them. It does create a whole new opportunity of independence for them, and being able to see their families. They are very technologically savvy, and I'm so impressed by so many people, and they love those opportunities to be able to have those things in their home. And it becomes exciting and fun, and they're engaging second and third generations of their families right there in their home, and they're feeling like part of that circle, in that unit in their family, because they're able to all use that technology. It's a lot of fun to see that.
And I just play off of what they just said. I think I agree with you, Mary. We're not seeing lack of technology skills. If anything, I think maybe we've bucketed everything a little bit too generically. So we bucketed all this technology for older people and say, why don't they use all of it? Well, a lot of it's just monitoring for the caregiver. And, just like a kid, nobody wants to be monitored. Nobody wants to be babysat. And so we see it with a lot of the aging individuals we've talked to. They're like, yeah, why would I use that? You just want to know that I'm like, moving or whatever. So when we really look at something like Labrador and we look at other products in the space, it has to provide utility for the user. It can't just provide utility for some secondary player like a caregiver or a doctor. It's got to do both. And that's where like you see Alexa being adopted. You see some smartwatches or step monitors be adopted. You're seeing plenty of technology be adopted by aging individuals. It just has to provide utility. And a Labrador Retriever provides utility. It's not just something on the wall that says, oh, you moved around, I'm going to let your daughter know. That's not helpful.
This technology is only going to get better with time. What's the vision here of how the Retriever Pro and others that follow can really improve the lives of older adults and caregivers? Where's this all going, Mike?
Long term, it's to, I think, really revolutionize home health. When we look at that, I go back to that experience of my mom being discharged from the rehab hospital and it feeling like 1930s about, well, how do we solve what we're going to do and how do we piece this together? I think as a society, we can do a lot better than that. And what we're adding to that is a platform that moves. So think of it, once you add, okay, let's say it's the telehealth visit. Well, that tablet isn't sitting on the table unplugged. It's on the robot. It's already ready, charged up and ready to go and can bring it to the person when they want. And also, by the way, take it out of their space when they want the privacy. So, or you can bring the blood pressure cuff, bring the medication, as well as engage the user. I think Michael bringing this up is that the reason we win is that people like using the product. It's like, I can see that so-and-so got up. I know more about our pilot users when they're using the robot than I do about what's going on with my mom on a daily basis. But I know that because they got up, they sent it to the kitchen, and then they sent it to their desk, and I can see they're in a routine. And I think that flow is that's the trade. And I think, Mary, it's different from, I know you get a lot of companies coming at you with the smart tech for the home, but again, like Micah said, a lot of times it's just for the purpose of the outside folks. So I think what we're trying to blend is a platform that's really welcome in the home, gives us permission to be there and is comfortable and respects people's privacy, but at the same time can let them share that information. So we really see this as a new type of platform for home health to extend that impact of the caregivers and of the health system for the long hours that it can't be there, and to deal with the shortage of labor that we have, where it's not replacing just the hours worked. It's really letting the labor focus on the high touch personal care aspect. And then, like as John said, the mundane things, let the robot do that, or let it do off, don't have to. I imagine how many times you guys get called to go to a house for one simple thing in the middle of the night, when that could really have been delegated. And that's not good for the user, and it's also not good for your staff. So that's where we really see that experience in nursing, that experience in healthcare or post-acute care, so much of that could be much more robust in the home with these types of tools.
I had the privilege of attending the Ziegler Linkage conference in Chicago last July. And one of the top issues was staffing inside assisted living and senior housing. And I remember some people actually in tears talking about not being able to do their job as an executive director because they were doing so many other people's jobs. And I really see this as a big problem. And so how does this play a role with staffing, both for home care and for senior housing? Yeah,
and you have two different models. So in home care, it's the dominoes model, is that you have to get the care into the home. So much of the time, I don't have the numbers, but they're incredibly high, is the number of visits, the number of miles driven by home health and home care givers is astronomical. And so normally, like if you're getting private duty care, even for the low cost options, you're talking about $100 per visit because it's $25 an hour and they charge you a minimum of 4 hours. That cost also applies to the care providers. They have a minimum. There's a minimum amount of time they can engage a worker, and most of their time is in the car, not with the person. So what the robot is doing is providing this idea of asynchronous care, that we can have the caregiver can have impact for the long hours that are not there without having that transition cost back and forth. That model flips. So when you go to assisted living or skilled nursing, you've brought all the people to the caregivers. You've eliminated that problem. And now the issue, like you're saying, Mary, is there's just not enough workers to go around, and in very stressful situations. And so, like, like when we heard the same emotional language of bring the blood pressure or the boiling point down on these caregivers, because a staff might be short like 30% and still expected to hit as much support. We're really starting, I think this is sort of version 1.0 for us, where we're really focusing first on assisted living. That's where you see these other placements like Masonic Homes of California. A good friend of yours probably is Western Homes out in Iowa, a number of other locations that are there. They're trying to provide it in a local zone. So where you have a cluster of rooms that usually have some sort of more community amenities, like a central living room, a central kitchen, the sort of flexibility space that people feel they're in a facility, but it's much more home-like, much more residential. And the robot is a resource there for both the staff and the residents. So the residents can take their trash to the to the trash room, or go and even have a laundry room. So this idea, not just to like put work over to the residents, but to have the residents be more active. And then if there's these requests, can we automate some of those things? So I need a drink or I need something to my room. That could be something the robot does, rather than taking well, when the caregiver is getting that call, they're busy probably helping somebody with something more significant in their room. That's that high touch care. So, and I know Cassandra, like I've learned a lot from Cassandra and John, is that their model isn't just providing care in the home, it's providing care to assisted living facilities that are contracting them in for their service. So they can speak to this tension there as well.
There's an issue that we want to bring out too, that because this is a B2B podcast, okay, so we have a lot of people who hopefully are watching this who might have a question like, okay, well, tell us why this makes economic sense. How much does it cost? Should we be looking at this for our facility? So you have a sales pitch, I'm sure, Mike, but everybody else can chime in here too.
Yeah, I mean, I think we have a pricing model for this that it depends on the level of use. And so that's the best answer is call us, because what we're trying to do is if you're using it in the either at home for paid care, or you're using it in the residence, like you have some acute users that either are in assisted living, or they're people that want to stay in independent living. Again, there's 31 flavors of senior living. So you could have someone that's a couple, one person is it doesn't really need much support. The spouse does. They want to stay in that nice cottage or that setup they have, but they need that extra help. So that's one pricing model. The next level is a one to several. So where the robot is on that floor and is helping, there's more enterprise integration. So the staff can call it, probably hooks up with Alexa or what you have deployed, and also for the residents and members. So, and what we're really trying to do is the daily rate or the monthly rate, the robot is done on a subscription, is really there's a payback in terms of the hours saved. If it's going into the home, we're saving that caregiver visit like once per week. Can we reduce that on the edge? For the residential space, we're really trying to cut the number of hours a week of walking back and forth. That's what it comes down to on that stuff. So those are the payback models that we're looking at. And so that's something we talk about, and we really want to fine tune into what they are. I would say is that we're probably we have to be one of the most affordable business to business robots that are out there. And that really comes from our background in consumer electronics and how we see this scaling over time.
Micah, as you look at it, obviously things have to make sense for Nationwide to say we're going to back this, or as an insurance provider, even to help pay for it. Tell us what your thoughts are here. This makes economic sense.
Well, we're still a little bit early on that. We've got, been focused mostly on desirability of our consumer group. Would they adopt something like this? And we've really been interested in understanding the data can help us, better predict a lot of things like medication adherence and lots of other things that is still sort of up in the air as to what we're learning. And that's the fun part of being in innovation. I can be a little bit more of a I don't have to have the viable model just yet. I think there's a lot of places that this can go. I think one of the things, and I go back quickly to what Mike said earlier about how this robot serves the needs of these consumers. You look across industrial uses, you look at even fast foods adopting robots pretty quickly. And you see common things, labor shortage, redundant, very basic loops that these robots can do and do them better and more efficient. I think that's probably where we're going to see this right away in the consumer space. And I've joked with Mike many times, I also want a robot and I don't need one right now. So there's a lot of reasons why we might see success here. And I think more important than anything, we look at this and say, how can we help people age in home? We help insure your home. We help insure your life. We help provide you annuity payments so that you can stay, living with a retirement income. And so we help you in a multitude of ways. And I think really in all of those, I could see, Labrador robot helping out.
John and Cassandra.
Well, let me just say, one of the instances that are really something I think Mike, from a specialized technical standpoint, can look at. From a HIPAA standpoint, we'll have we do very extensive clinical care assessments. We have an occupational therapist working for us, speech pathologist, social worker, psychologist. We have a doctor on staff. So we get a kick out of people calling us, well, I'm a medical in-home care company. How can you be if you're a healthcare company, you're dealing with healthcare issues? So we don't like to label us like that. But we find, for instance, with medication contraindicators, if we have somebody who has a cardiological condition and they're seeing a cardiologist who has them on a beta blocker for care, and then they also have a major depressive disorder, and they're on an SSRI, serotonin selective reuptake inhibitor for care, the doctors themselves are not talking among themselves, but the medication contraindicators are huge, because the beta blockers can cause depression, and they have a depressive disorder, and there's a contraindicator there from the heart to the mind. So if there was a way for the technology of the robots to be able to monitor that, that could save a lot of money too, with increased hospitalizations. Everybody's always looking for outcomes, right? And our goal is to bring the hospital experience in home. And we have a whole thing that's not our time to talk about this now. I mean, of course, but we think that we can bring the hospital care in home, and we think the robots can play a major part of that. So.
Wow. First of all, I love the data that you're all collecting and sharing about the customer. That's going to inform everyone's business strategy and plan. I also love the quality of the brands that you brought around the company, Mike.
Yeah.
Nationwide, Western Homes, Masonic Homes, and this amazing concierge team. Everyone should have that quality of care. And of course, I would love a robot here.
Right.
Because,
Yes.
our generation of women, I'm 74, the top of the boomers are 76. They're going to be 76 to 86 the next 10 years. Our desire to do housework was never that.
Right.
We went to work, right? And now to be home, to have this kind of housekeeping care, in addition to helping with a person that we may know that's disabled, that's going to be really important to extending our own freedom at home, I think. But I don't know if you want to respond to that, but A+, I'm a professor. A+ on the quality of your partners.
And I think that's mutual in the sense of it's really, I think the harsh reality sometimes in healthcare is that there's focus on quality of service, but not quality of life. And that's because that's what the system pays for. And so what's interesting is what we've tried to find are the folks that sort of fight that natural trend. It's definitely like what you see with Cassandra and John on The Perfect Companion, like saying we can provide more than just like John, more than just non-medical care, like more than just somebody coming to help mom out of bed. And because there's so much more to know about what's going on. Or like with Nationwide with long-term care insurance, like something I wish I had. I won't shamelessly plug it, but man, like so many people don't realize, the percent of us that are going to need support as we get older and we're aging longer, and like the generation of my mom having a totally different experience. She's now 91, and she's going to be around for more and more years. What is so different than my experience with her mother, my grandmother, in the 80s in a nursing home. And so I think what we're attracted to in all these partners, Pace with the Unlock is the exact same way out of San Francisco. Like they all go above and beyond the call of duty and say, like, I think everybody takes this idea of what do I want my life to be like when I get to this stage? And all of us face the harsh reality of what that could be, either for ourselves or for people that we love, and we're going to need to help support. So rather than sort of putting the blinders on and not wanting to think about it, it's the folks that are saying, well, we got to do this today so that in 10 years, the world's like this when we get to that next stage. And I appreciate your organization too, Mary, in terms of like that level of discussion. You were there in the beginning when we first started, going to like the Venture Summit in San Francisco. We need more people on this frequency. Let me put it that way.
That's Unlock was with us in the first conference, and we knew the founder. So tell us, I'm sure many people would want to know more about this. Where can they go for information?
So please, always go to our website, labradorsystems.com. And then also probably the best way is just email us at team@labradorsystems.com. That will see it and we'll direct it to the right folks, because we're getting inquiries. We're supporting a number of different segments. We're testing with consumers in terms of what makes sense for them. So there'll be some pilot studies there in certain areas. We're now, as we finally unveiled it, we're full out on the B2B side, and that's both in the home for paid care, but also for, in senior living, particularly in independent living and assisted living. So please reach out to us again, team@labradorsystems.com. Mention you saw us on the podcast, and that's and our website really provides a lot more context of what's going on.
Terrific. Well, Mike, Micah, John, and Cassandra, thank you so much for coming on to share all of this with us. Congratulations on the innovations and innovative thinking.
Yes, congratulations to all of you for the care that you show older adults, and the innovation and the collaboration, and the choosing the very best partners. That's really important. So I'm inspired by your work.
Okay, thank you, Mary, and thank you to Micah, John, and Cassandra, and for all the support, and to Fred for giving us the chance to talk today.
We're very grateful for the honor, and we're grateful for the opportunity, and we love what everyone is doing. So
yes, absolutely.
Yeah,
that's
thank
great.
you.
And we want to thank our audience for spending time with us too. You can find much more, including our What's Next Living Longer, Better, Smarter podcast at maryfurlong.com/podcasts. And you can also now find us on Spiro 100 at hundreds of senior living locations, and by subscription as well. Find more at home.spiro100.com.